Okay, goddesses, we are live, and to give our fellow goddesses and gods an opportunity to jump on, yeah, come on, jump on with us, and while we're live, we're just live, folks, and I'm just so glad that everyone is here with us today for another awesome episode with the Goddess-ity podcast. I am your host today, Goddess Linda, coming to you live in full effect, Costa Rica, baby. Yes, Pura Vida.
Yes.
Yes. And so I'm here with my fellow co hosts. We have Miss April, Goddess April, Goddess Juanita,
Hi.
and Goddess Akili.
Hey.
And today, our topic is the fear of expansion. And before I get into a little bit more of what that's about, what I would like for you all to do when you come in, just say hi to us. Let us know where you're watching from. Just drop in your state or your city, whatever you feel like putting, and talk to us. We're here to talk with you and talk back. So, as I said, our topic today is the fear of expansion. And we're going to talk about what that is. What is expansion? So, we're going to define that, give you some various context, how that comes into play as far as personal growth, your spirituality, professional, emotional, um, and why expansion is important, and the how it can lead to other opportunities and all these goals and creativity that you have within you. And I'm sure we're going to share some personal stories behind that, and then also we'll be discussing um, why we fear expansion. Sometimes we don't think we fear it, but it shows up in our life, and we experience it. So we're going to explore the psychology and the emotional roots of fear, and associated with expansion. There's the fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of success. We're going to discuss the societal and cultural factors that may contribute to this fear, and particularly within the context of the Black community. Um, and we're just going to have an open discussion about that. And then, how can spirituality help us overcome this fear of expansion? So, we're going to discuss the role of spiritual practices in overcoming fear, such as meditation, prayer, affirmations, and ancestral guidance. We'll also highlight how connecting with spiritual beliefs and practices can provide strength, clarity, and confidence during periods of expansion. And then finally, what are some of the challenges that may show up when you are trying to overcome that foul four-letter word, fear? So we're going to discuss those types of challenges and that can arise, and it's whether it's internal resistance, external obstacles, those setbacks. So, and we'll also share some of those experiences that we've had personally in overcoming these challenges. And so I want to encourage our listeners, our viewers, to um, interact with us. Ask us questions, give us your own personal experience. Just drop it in the comments. And so, with that said, I am going to turn this over to Goddess Juanita as she talks to us about what expansion is.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad that you're joining us today. I want to talk a little bit about expansion. What is that? I mean, when you think about expansion, I mean, most of us think about, something getting bigger, something getting larger, right? And I would say from a spiritual context, it really has to do with expanding your understanding of, where you are right now. Like you're expanding beyond what you can understand, what your experiences are. So I would say this, when you're thinking about expansion, you're looking to actually maybe you think, have a different way that you think of something. A lot we talked about kind of in our previous about limiting beliefs. I mean, when you're kind of expanding, you're like looking at those things. How do we think about something? How do you go about something? And you're trying to determine, hey, is that limiting my life? Or do I need to have a different belief if I want to expand, right? And it's also about broadening our consciousness, deepening our connection with the divine, and evolving spiritually, right? The third thing I want to talk about is this expansion involves moving past your ego. A lot of times when you're getting ready to try to do something new or grow, the first thing is your mind tells you something like, hey, you're good where you are. I mean, why do you need to do something else? I mean, you'll think about, okay, I want to start this business. Your ego will say, okay, well, you ain't got but such and such amount in your bank. How you gonna do that, right? You start getting all of these questions in your mind. Even if you say, hey, maybe I want to start doing meditation. And then you sit down and you try to meditate. And then, of course, all these things start coming in your mind. And then, you do it a couple times and you'll finally say, somebody says, oh, do you meditate? You say, oh, no, I tried that. That doesn't work for me, right? All of these things. But you have to know when you're getting ready to try to expand or grow, you are going to face resistance, right? Resistance. It's almost like, how you blow up a balloon and you're blowing and you blow, and each time you have to get a little bit more air. And like the first time it's easy, and the second time it gets a little bit harder, and then the next time as it goes up, it gets a little bit more harder, right? It's kind of like that when you're expanding. The first time you do a little something, it's not as much, but every time you try to go to that next level, next level, next level, it gets to be a little bit more challenging. Another thing to talk about expansion, I think, the fear of expansion is, and we have to realize this, everybody might not choose to expand, and that's okay. Some people might say, hey, I'm good where I am. I like doing the same thing. I like to have the same structure. I'm happy with that. And that's okay. Expansion is not for everyone, but there are going to be those that are called to want more, to learn more. They're going to have this probably purpose in their lives where they feel like they're getting this call, like, whatever they're doing, it just feels like they're not where they're supposed to be. And if you are getting that calling, if you feel like every morning you wake up and something is saying, okay, you're going to this job, you're doing these things, but there is something else, that means you're being called to expand. I mean, that is it. If you're getting these signs, if you're feeling this way, if you're feeling uncomfortable in your own skin, right?
Yeah.
That's telling you want to expand. And I want to talk about a few of the reasons why some people choose to expand spiritually. They believe there's a deeper meaning to life, right? They mean there's something else. It's something I'm supposed to be doing, right? They're looking for peace, fulfillment, and they're looking for contentment. Maybe there's a struggle they're going through and they feel like they can't overcome it, and they're looking for expansion or more knowledge or more understanding. Like just like we've been talking about in the past, like with relationships, as we kind of have been going through our journey, we start understanding that these conflicts that we have in relationships are not just us having conflicts. They really are there to teach us something about ourselves. They're there to kind of help us go to the next level, right? But that is getting a spiritual understanding of something happening that is not happening to you, it's happening for you, right? And you don't get that until you've expanded, and then you get that, right? You might be trying to get some healing from emotional or psychological wounds. We talk about the generational curse. We talk about going back and talking to our ancestors, right? And maybe dealing with some of those curses. You almost feel like that there is a bigger purpose for you. You have a calling that tells you are here to do something special, and only you can do it. Then you're being called to expand. And then I just want to give one example of, from a personal experience of mine. I had started doing probably like a year ago. This happened a year or two ago. I was doing a lot of sun gazing, right? A lot of sun gazing. I mean, I was doing it in the morning for 10 to 15 minutes. I would do it in the evening for 10 to 15 minutes.
That's
And
good.
then one morning, I walked out of my house to go do sun gazing. And when the sun hit me, I felt larger than life. I can't even explain it. I felt like I was like 10 or 12 feet tall and I was looking down on myself walking. And it was really weird. But what I realized is that in all of that, I guess building up my melanin, I don't know, it has started showing me that I was much more than what this body could hold. I was
Mm.
much more than that. So because of that, and it was just like, wow, because I was like, wow. I'm like, I mean, it's like I can see myself like way up here and way out here. And I was like, wow. I mean, to see that was just so amazing. So
Yeah.
if you go on a journey to expand, I'm telling you, the things that will be revealed to you would just be so amazing. So I like to open it up to the other goddesses if they want to share a little bit about their definition of expansion or experience that they've had. Anyone? All right. Well, that's for me. On to the next question.
All
I feel like
right.
Keely was about to say something. Where
Okay.
you got?
Keely.
I just, I sometimes I'll just wait until I'm like, all right, am I gonna jump in? It's kind of like double dutch
That's
around
right.
here, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think everything you said was just so on point, and I love to talk
Yeah.
about purpose. I really
Yeah.
do. It's one of my favorite things to jump into because I feel like I'm a purpose driven individual.
Mm.
And if you are able to move in alignment with your purpose, life can be so much more enjoyable. It's not to say that it won't be without the pain associated with expansion, right? That in itself is discomfort. You might understand the hell out of it because you're a spiritual being that gets it, but that doesn't always make it less uncomfortable. But I
Yeah.
do recall feeling very strongly so many times when I'm not in alignment with purpose that hierarchically, spirit, soul, goddess, God is reaching out like, look, hey, excuse me, this is not it, girl. You are completely out of alignment. And for me, even that conversation creates some pain. It creates a lot of discomfort. Like I can't stand it when I'm not feeling like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing or I'm doing what is in alignment with the Most High.
Yeah.
So I understand what you mean by that in a way that it's hard for me to even put words around, but I know my goddesses understand me.
Yeah.
So, yes, that was all I wanted to say. I feel it.
I do.
I feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you guys both did a phenomenal job. So.
Yes. Goddess April, did you have anything before we move on to the next segment?
I
Well,
did.
okay then. Well, Goddess Akili, we're going to turn it back over to you. So, why do we fear expansion?
Ooh.
Mm.
So I know I sounded like Marvin Gaye for a moment there. Just a
Yeah,
brief
what's going
second.
on?
My inner Marvin came out like, ooh, okay, here we go. So this is the interesting thing about fear. It creeps in, um, for a number of reasons, but they typically all boil down to the same thing, and it is pain. Right? We can talk about the fear of expansion, or the fear of success, or the fear of losing. But if we make it even more simple and just talk about pain, there's like three
Mm.
things that we don't want to experience in terms of pain. It is loss pain,
Mhm.
okay? Pain of losing something. It is hardship pain,
Mm.
the pain associated with dealing with some level of hardship, some
Yep.
sort of suffering,
Yep.
right? Or it is outcome pain, okay?
Mm.
Mm.
Perhaps What I really am looking for is not going to create this greener yard.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe what I'm thinking about is not going to deliver the results that I want. Those three things are why we tend to stay stuck. We don't want to experience any of that.
Yeah.
Okay. None
Yep.
of it. Okay.
We don't. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So when I think about us as a community, right, I always liken the fact that if Black history was a 1,000 page book, slavery would be page 999.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't always get the opportunity to have enough knowledge about those previous 998 pages. So we have to speak to the things that continuously get regurgitated or the things that we know have had very specific outcomes. So when I
Hmm.
think about the Black community, right, I think about where we have experienced pain associated with loss. What in the world do I not have the ability to touch on here? If I
Hmm.
talk about so many leaders who are no longer here,
Yep.
so many Black Wall Streets that were created and burnt to the ground, so
Hmm.
many days of Jim Crow, so many days of working inside of a caste system supported by the religion of white superiority. The
Yep.
various wars on drugs and on crime, really disguised because they were certainly wars on Black people, right?
Mm.
Described in this particular country, say nothing to me but loss pain that
Hmm.
is engaging us in very high levels of trauma, and a fear of loss can easily be created by something like that,
Definitely.
right? Would make it hard for you to want to expand sometimes if that was
Hmm.
like the outcomes could be,
Yep.
right? Where have we experienced pain associated to hardship, uncertainty, or discomfort? Well, as a collective, I'm going to reiterate this concept of the caste system in America in particular, which has been commingled with the concept of race.
Hmm.
Obviously, we know there are caste systems in other parts of the world, but exclusively here in America, ours has been very specific to the color of one's skin and the attempt to try to make sure that Black people were at the bottom of that caste system.
Yep.
Now, with that caste system, here we go with a bunch of disparities that come from that occurring, right? The Black tax, which we're still experiencing to this day, right? Healthcare disparities, which we're still experiencing to this day. Education disparities, which we're still experiencing to this day. Food deserts. I mean, the list could go on and on in
Yes.
terms of, again, hardships that have come as what they are.
Yeah.
And then as a community, if I talk about this last piece of the puzzle with outcome pain, right? Where for us have we seen that the grass is not always greener on the other side? Well, it's not to say that other people, again, don't experience these things, but I feel like movements that have been uprooted,
Yeah.
assassinations that have been
Hmm.
carried out, leaders that have been led astray, not necessarily because, okay, we're just in a situation where somebody else is giving me better opportunities, but actually threatened and made to believe that if they don't choose to go astray and move against their community, other things would happen, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there have been a number of things that have tried to snuff out what is the spark of Black people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and fortunately, there's just a great deal of amazingness that still exists.
Ain't do nothing with it. Net.
I mean, there's just a great deal of amazingness that is in who we are. You guys always know when I talk about being Black, I feel like that's one of my superpowers. Not that other people don't have superpowers, but this is definitely one of mine. Okay. Oh yes, it is just one of the things that I feel like make me who I am.
Yeah.
So those are things that we've definitely had to try to continue to circumvent, and there's always, these obstacles. But again, as we've talked about expansion, we know that these aren't things that are just going to magically disappear. So we always have to figure out ways to move above.
Yeah.
Even in the metaphysical community, though, it can be challenging as we start to consider the pain of, is the grass greener on the other side, right? Because on some level, I feel like we are taught to believe that experiencing discomfort is mental, right? All we have to do is change the view of it, and then it becomes something else,
Yeah.
right? And so it's most certainly I feel like a situation that can create a great deal of internal chaos that we have to put ourselves in the mindset to be able to say, all right, this is something that I'm going to choose to create very differently. So that kind of brings me to my point of how fear manifests, or that pain manifests in different aspects of life. I want to say that I am up to creating a world again where all people can have access to whatever it is that their heart's desire is, right? But what I am going to say is that I feel very strongly about helping Black people who want to remember their greatness, remember their greatness. We have other things to remember besides trauma. Like I said, page 999 is page 999. We need to remember before page 999.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts, goddesses, about how this shows up? Could be in career, could be in relationships, could be in a spiritual journey. What say you, beautiful people?
Well, I'll just say real quick. I'll just add this: how it can show up, how it can manifest this fear in my own personal career. And not to be the victim here at all, but it was what I observed. Another Black woman in a position of authority had such fear of anyone that to her she deemed more talented.
Mm.
So as a result, it was a very toxic environment that she created. She created chaos. She created fires so that she can then come to the rescue and put the fires out. I'm like, but you started the fire, you know? So that's how fear can manifest itself, because she, somewhere in her mind, and not even in her mind, but through the caste system, that she felt, I made it to this one coveted spot. I have to protect it at all cost. Although I want to leave this legacy of helping bringing other Black men and women along.
Mhm.
Oh, I brought you along. Oh my goodness, you're good at what you do. Let me sabotage that so that I can still remain at the top.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that was fear. fear of her not feeling um, capable. But I'm like, you got where you were, so therefore you were capable. But yeah, that's how I saw
Mhm.
just one example, small example of how I saw fear manifesting itself
Mhm.
in a person.
Yeah, that sounds like loss pain, right? Fear of
Mm,
losing something. And then
Mm-hmm.
it also sounds like internalized racism, because I think it's very hard to live in this space and
Mm.
not
yeah.
start to practice some of those concepts associated with assimilation. If you
Mm,
believe that you need to assimilate with somebody in order to be on their same level, then it
yep.
becomes very easy to take on the views of the people
Yep.
who
Yeah.
try to marginalize you in the first place. So I
Mhm.
I feel
Very
like it's so unfortunate. I don't like to
Yeah.
hear that, but I know it exists. I
It was
don't.
sad to witness. It was
Yeah,
sad to witness.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's Goddess was talking about that. I think as the Black community,
Mhm.
we're talking about especially Black women. I think expansion, especially on a spiritual level, is something that we need more than anybody because of all the trauma. Because to me, I guess when I think about expansion, the reason I can go into an environment and deal with some of the things that I have to deal with
Mhm.
is because I understand things more on a spiritual level. It helps me to deal with it better, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because if I just saw it in the physical, then I would be upset. I'd be lashing out. I'd be crying the victim. I'd be, all of these things. But because I can see really what's going on in the spiritual with all of that, it
Mhm.
kind of just puts me at ease because I know, hey, there is a all of these people are playing this part. You know what I'm saying? And there's a bigger purpose that's going on here, Juanita. It's not just about, and it helps me not to internalize it and make it be about me, right? So, we're talking about expansion and the fear of expansion. I can understand why people would fear that because it's the unknown and where is that going to lead. The other thing I think we were talking about with expansion that I think is really for most people, especially us Black people that have been brought up in the Christian religion, when you say expansion, that's kind of like woo woo for people. Like, what is that exactly? Are you talking about I'm gonna be, I don't know, doing all these things that in the Bible is supposed to be not maybe do that? You know what I'm saying? So I think some of the terms that you use, like expansion, spiritually growing, those things people think of as metaphysical. What is that? What is that really? I mean, or is it the work of the devil? Is it, you know what I mean? Those kind of things as well that people think, okay, I don't want to get into that. If it doesn't say anything about Jesus or whatever, then no, I don't want to do that. So I think there's
Mhm.
also some of that with having, I guess you could say, fearing what is the expansion is going to be because there's nowhere that it's written down. Like, if I do this, this is the result I'm going to get. As we know, we go through this journey, we start taking these steps because our spirit is kind of guiding us. But what we don't know is where it's going to lead us next. And sometimes where it leads us is not exactly what what we're thinking. And we're like on a whole, we're on this path, and all of a sudden we're on this path, and then we're jumping in this path, and we're like, okay, I'm just gonna go along, right? So I think a lot of times too, people like the religion because there's like a format you can follow, there's a thing you can do. People keep telling you to do this, this, and that. But when you're on this kind of journey of the spirituality and expansion and growth, there's not really any roadmap to follow. It's kind of like it's leaving it up to you. And most of the time, like I think, we were talking about last week, people don't trust their own selves
That
to
right there.
follow the path of where they have to go in their spiritual journey. And to me,
Mhm.
that's another fear of expansion because you don't trust where yourself is telling you to go.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's where religious come into play because they put the power outside of you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
There
so
you
there's
go.
that
And you
fear.
don't have to take no responsibility.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's like how dare I think I have the ability
I
to
know.
expand myself, my way of thinking, my way of being,
Mhm.
and call without calling on the name of someone, this entity outside of me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And hey, but that's what being a goddess is all about, having the Goddess-ity, the audacity to embrace your inner divinity.
There you
That's what
go.
we're about here, people.
That's right.
Yes.
Exactly. When I hear Goddess Juanita and Goddess Linda both say that to me, because I'm gonna try to circle it back in, both of those things represent fear that's being caused by the loss associated with pain, right? I'm going to lose potentially this relationship with what has been manufactured for me,
Mhm.
and the outcome
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
not be right.
Yep.
Like, if I make this decision to start doing things on my own, I can't tell you how many people in Christianity, when I was heavy into the Christian world, was like, I just can't do it on my own. That's
Yeah.
why I just always say that if God wasn't in charge of this, XYZ wouldn't even be, I wouldn't even be here today. And I'm not saying that that is not their experience by no means. However, I do feel like I do feel like there is this fear of this outcome of, if I don't do this, what if I end up in hell? What if I end up in these, in these places where I'm ostracized and kicked out of the church, as I've seen many people go through as well. I mean, there's a lot of pain that is underneath this fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is
Mhm.
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you all. Do we have any other comments,
I
input on
think I
this?
was just gonna say that I think you guys are definitely speaking to where I am in regards to um straddling this fence of not feeling like, so being called to something bigger, something larger, because I'm expanding in that direction. But like Goddess Juanita said, is that I'm being called to do some things that doesn't have a blueprint for it, right? And
Mhm.
so not only am I afraid of the unknown, and whether or not I can, if I jump out there, am I going to be able to live up to that thing? Am I going to be able to execute it at the level that I would want to? Am I gonna be good enough? There's also the fear of the unknown in terms of, like we've talked about before, I've talked about being afraid of my own greatness, right? Because there's so much around that, and some of it is still connected to spirituality. I'm sorry, Christianity, right? So it's the unknown of it, but then it's also this you don't want to be too big, right? You don't want to think too much of yourself. There's this, you need to humble yourself some, or there's this, like, you know what I mean, what are people going to think? You know what I mean? Who do you think you are, type thing. So it's all of these things. Is really the fear of what other people are going to think, how it's going to separate you. You
Mhm.
know, it's all of these things around it that can really get in the way of you just doing the damn thing, right?
Yep.
So
Facts.
so you guys have touched on all of those things for me, where I know that I have been, you know,
Yeah.
double dutching. I've been straddling. I've been, yeah, I know
You're in that place of expansion. And
I am.
yeah, and I believe we're all touching on spirituality, and so this is just the perfect segue into you, Goddess. Um, I'm looking right at you, Goddess April. It's like,
So good.
duh. Yeah, this perfect segue into discussing how can spirituality help us overcome the fear of expansion. So
Mm.
take it away.
Yeah. So, okay, this is so good because I feel like some of the things, this conversation is helping me to think about it even more in the different way. So we know that traditionally how spirituality is looked at, like was mentioned, about it being outside of you, right? Something separate from you. Is something that you need to practice, is something that you want to build to, it's something that you want to um elevate in. It's this thing that, or you aspire to get to this level of spirituality, right? um and I'm not saying that there isn't, because it is a very layered thing, I'm not saying that there isn't some of that in it, but a lot of times we do put it on this pedestal that sits outside of us, right? As opposed to how we talk about it, understanding that we are divine, right? um but we are navigating this 3D realm, so we do and have talked about these tools that are available to us. Why not, right? Use them to help us to connect, to ground, to get clarity. So we have talked about affirmations, we've talked about meditation, we've talked about getting ancestral guidance, right? We did a whole episode on divination tools, right? That can help us in that way when we are struggling, and one of those being afraid. So affirmations definitely, and meditation as a way to make sure that you connect in and remember, that God self. So those things are very powerful, and we talk about them and we use them because they do help us, right? Um, and I want to actually, for a second, also, I want to take the conversation, since we're talking about expansion. I'm gonna expand a little bit, right? And go a little bit on the way that we talk about it. I want us to do that in this moment in terms of spirituality, talk about it from a higher perspective. But before I do that, I want to just acknowledge that a lot of these concepts, and I may have said this before, we understand that they may feel woo woo to some people. They may feel hard to reach or hard to get around. And so that was one of the reasons why we wanted to bring Reginald Martin on, which he was a guest with us last week. Because we know that there are things that can be helpful to people, right? To help them go deeper, to help them get a better understanding. And so Comedic Centered Living, which he founded, was that for us. It was one of the things that was very helpful for us, because we wouldn't even be able to talk about it in the way that we're talking about it today, potentially, without some of that deeper knowledge in helping us to navigate past Christianity and connect the dots and things like that. So, we had a great conversation with him, and he talked about Comedic Centered Living, but I was able to get those links that I promised to the courses that he offers that could be very helpful to folks who are looking for some assistance with just getting a grasp on these concepts that we're saying in a much deeper way, right? And it helps to help get rid of that fear, right? So if you go to that last live where we interview Reginald Martin, you'll find the links to those courses. And because we're constantly expanding, guys, as we continue to find courses, have events, books, or whatever, we will continue to offer those to you. Absolutely. If we feel like it benefits us, we want to share those. And we want to be one of those resources as well. We are very hopeful that this podcast, okay, is one of those things. And we want to, get to a point where we offer perhaps some courses and events and retreats and things like that, right? But if you want to reach out to us, as Linda said, leave comments and things like that, we definitely would want you to, comment. But we also have an email that you can reach out to us at if you want to, anonymously or not, um, share something with us, ask questions or anything like that. We would love for you to do that. With your permission, we might even share it on the podcast, but we want to be a resource for you if we can. Okay. So I just wanted to say that. Now, yes.
Woo.
So now to go a little bit further, right? Past this, the way that a lot of we know traditionally we think of spirituality is the idea that we are and everything else is spirit, right? We know that. The goddesses and I talk about that all the time, right? That everything is energy, right? And for us, if I'm not mistaken, I know for me, it is synonymous with spirit. Okay, it's another word for it, right? It's that God source, that God energy. We've talked about how quantum physics, quantum field, quantum mechanics, you can find the science behind the fact that everything in existence, animate, inanimate, right, has at the foundation that same God energy. So I say that because as we are talking about how can spirituality help us overcome fear, if you can wrap your mind around that every single thing in existence is spirit, that everything is one in the same, that you are it and it is you in some respect, right? Then truly there is nothing to fear.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yes.
that is a place that I aspire to stay in more often than not.
Yes.
Okay.
Stay in. Yes.
I am I am trying to expand in that direction because it's not easy when you're navigating this realm to remember that because you are in the midst of it. You are interacting with it, right? You have these relationships, these people, these things, these events, and what's going on around you. It seems so real. And I'm not saying that it's not, but all of it, even when it feels bad to you, as Goddess Juanita said, it's serving a purpose. All of this is for us. So if we tap into, right, the tool that we gave its own episode, which is intuition, that God source, that inner voice, that compass, that within, right? They cost nothing and is always readily available to you. Right? It will serve you every single time if you listen and trust it, which you guys have already alluded to. Trusting yourself, trusting that God is that guidance, trusting that you are, right? You are source, right? You are that divine being. So I just wanted to go there as a way to say basically that like you are your own tool. Like you are the key. You are it. You are the je ne sais quoi. You are everything, right? You are everything and it is you,
Yeah.
right? And so if we can, you know, wrap our minds again around that, then truly, truly, it will be so much easier for us to remember that there really is absolutely nothing to fear. So I just wanted to say that, and I'll open it up if anyone wants to touch on anything or add anything to that before we move on to the next topic.
All I know is that this song popped into my head. It's an oldie song. It's like you are everything and everything is
And
you.
everything is you.
Everything is you. Oh. And she knew it. And she knew it.
Okay. It was
Yeah.
so on point. It's the truth of it all, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
That
Tell 'em.
no? Okay. All right, y'all. That's it.
So
And
We done?
I wanted to add something, goddesses. I know
sure.
you guys have heard me talk about. I had started doing the goddess initiation thing with, I think her name is Aviola Abrams. I hope I'm
Yes.
pronouncing that right.
Mhm.
Sister, if I'm not, please forgive me. But it's like it's rituals that you have to do. It's probably Goddess April know as you're going through it. And I've been taking my time. I probably had the book at least a month, but I'm only at the second ritual, right? And one of the rituals that I finally did today was a cleansing. It was a cleansing of the space that I have my altar in. And so I just used it to cleanse my whole floor. So it's like using these herbs and all these things and making this solution and then adding water to it and cleaning your space, right? But one thing I can say about the whole initiation thing, or you know what I'm saying, going through these rituals, is I understand how, because before I did the ritual, I did the kind of background reading. And then sometimes when I do background reading, like say for instance, somebody will have a poem and it'll say, hey, on the Sahara Desert, on the something, 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 someplace. Well, this time I decided, you know what? I'm just not going to read about this. I'm going to research each of these places as I'm saying this poem because I want to be able to picture what they are talking about. And when I tell you, as I looked up everything that they talked about being in some kind of tribe, some kind of temple, being some. And every time I looked at those places, it was just so amazing how it gave me such a broader understanding of what they were speaking about in this poem instead of me just saying, oh, going through and reading the words, right? And going through and looking at things. And then today, as I was kind of doing my cleansing, I was trying to go back through and repeat that poem. But what I wanted to say from this whole fear of expansion is a lot of times I think, because with the ritual things, I always thought about rituals, I don't know. But as I started doing it, I feel out it wasn't woo woo. It made a whole lot of sense to what they were asking you to do and the background of the people that they had as the goddesses, the things that they were going through. Like, you know, one of them was the lady, and I can't remember I think they call her Sarah, but the one that was on display for people because they said her body was so grotesque because she was so curvaceous. They had her on there.
Oh
They had
yeah.
another lady that they had hung because they said she was against like the colonization and whatever. But as you saw them talking about these different people, then you could actually, I guess yourself, put yourself in their position and understand how in the face of things that they fear, because I mean, guess this black lady standing in front of all these people that are making fun of her because of the way her body looks. If you put yourself in there, you think, okay, this lady did this because she was forced to do this, or this lady went and she fought against this. And those things to me kind of put you into a place of like, if these people can do this thing, I mean, how can I not do these things that I'm doing? I mean, it's like this fear thing that I'm having, it makes no sense because these things that these people encounter is so much more right than that. And so I think what I'm saying is trying to say, and I think a lot of times with the fear, if you just take the first step, I think taking the first step is it. And once you take that step, you'll realize that it actually is something that, hey, you're going to get an understanding of, and you're going to understand why you're kind of going down this path. Because that's usually how it happens for me. Maybe I don't understand it, but once I start opening up the book, I start going through the things, then I'm like, oh, okay, I get this. I'm understanding this. And then that's like, and of course, I'm getting more knowledge and understanding, and it's expanding me to see, wow, something from a whole different place. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Love that.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just say, were you going to say something, Goddess Akili?
Mm-mm. You're good.
Oh, I just want to say, and again, all of these rituals and tools at our disposal. I don't want to, like I said, minimize them at all, even though I was trying to, go somewhere else with it. Um, that whole woo woo. I mean, the thing that I feel like I probably already got this point across. But I mean, when you think about if everything really is, if you can't allow yourself to wrap your mind around the fact that everything is spirit and there really is nothing to fear, because we're talking about overcoming things and things like that, but these rituals, these divination tools, like everything that you're doing right now, us having this conversation is spiritual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Every single thing that you do, drinking water, living your life, you cannot be a spirit and think that you're doing anything that's not spiritual.
That's right.
It just makes no sense,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And when we talk about these bigger concepts about how everything is an expression, manifestation of God at some different level of vibration,
Mhm.
every single thing,
Thing.
right? Like it's it. It
Yep.
is it. And so, um, I'm saying that because I know that it is very hard for people, especially if you come from religious background, to not be afraid of something outside of it, right? So I'm just trying to really, I guess, really, get at that point at how like it's really nothing to fear because it's just another manifestation of the divine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So anyway, I said it. I'm done.
Well, thank you for saying it. Thank you
I'm
for saying it.
done.
So,
No,
with that being said, now I'm
yes.
going to talk about the challenges that may
Yes.
show up when we try to overcome this nasty four-letter word of fear. And so
Yes.
it's like, okay, what are the type of challenges that can arise when we attempt to overcome this fear of expansion? Is it internal resistance or the external obstacles, setback? So the main thing that was coming up for me as far as what's the biggest challenge, the biggest challenge is remaining stuck and stagnant. The biggest challenge is overcoming that comfort zone. And it may not be comfortable of where you're at, but
Mm.
because I also see fear as, or my understanding of fear of the unknown. And so you're willing to stay where you're at simply
Mhm.
because you don't want to step out there and make the unknown known. And so as I was sitting up there thinking about that, just thinking about, just fear, what does it mean to me? What, that definition. And when I was just like, well, if we make the unknown known, well, how do we do that? Goddess-ity spoke on pain and how there's a lot going on here. So pain for me is it's your body speaking to you, telling you some things. It's communicating with you.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll speak
Mhm.
on just a minute where I believe that pain comes from. But if we just take a moment and not fear our emotions, um,
Mhm.
a lot of times, because that pain is so real, it presents itself physically. I mean, through
Mhm.
diseases,
Mhm.
headaches, just
Mhm.
all kinds of physical ailments, digestional situations.
Mhm.
That's our body telling us something, and then we need to listen to it instead of distracting ourselves with something else. Because I've been guilty of this, and I've heard other people say this, that when that pain comes up in their body, they believe that, oh, that's my answer, I should not do this. And so then they do something else to distract themselves, and now their body has calmed down. No, the body has only calmed down because you stayed in that place of comfort and contentment. And expanding beyond that fear is that we have to take that time to do those things that's going to get us beyond that comfort zone. um,
Yeah.
so going back to something that Goddess Akili was saying as far as the caste system, and this is things that I do for myself when I find myself dealing with fear. So, one thing that I struggled with was speaking up for myself. I would speak, but I wouldn't speak my total truth. And then I also would speak, but then I always spoke with other people in mind. I didn't want to make that person feel uncomfortable. So I chose to be uncomfortable instead.
Mm.
And so as I challenged myself as to where is that coming from? Where is that coming from? Oh, yeah, I can look back on um, things that happened in my marriage. And it's like, well, okay, well, that came from someplace. Well, then I can also look back on my childhood, things that my mom said to me that hurt me to the core, that had shown up as an adult. But then I was like, okay, well, why did she say what she said? Well, to know that she picked cotton as a young girl. My
Mm.
brain could not compute that because in history books, that was in the history books. Though she wasn't enslaved, but yet they still used that physical labor to get that cotton, you know. Um,
Mhm.
so to listen to her through a different perspective of how she said things. And it's like, okay, well, she was told that because her grandmother told her that. Well, why did her grandmother told her that? Because her grandmother was taught that you don't speak on certain things because it was out of protection.
Mhm.
You didn't speak on the fact that you knew how to read because you
Mhm.
could be killed.
Mhm.
So those things were continually taught to us out of protection, but not seeing that as we continue to develop and expand and have other opportunities for us, our families and generations were still somehow manipulating those truths
Mhm.
to protect us, but now I see them as a way that it's no longer protecting us. It's holding us back. So those are the challenges, and it keeps us from getting the things that we really want. Some of the other challenges, we continue to repeat these lessons. You asked for expansion. You might want expansion in your business, your relationship, um, your career, and the universe answers. It's going to answer. But then you're presented with something, and you're just like, okay, hold on, this don't feel right. And so then you do something that you don't end up going down that path that's taking you towards what you want. And then guess what? It's going to come back around and present it, because I believe that what is innately in us, that desire, that deep desire, the universe is continually trying to give it to us.
Mm.
But if we
Mhm.
keep getting in our own way and sabotaging it, that's where that lesson has to keep coming around and keep coming
Mhm.
around. And
Mhm.
it's like, okay, there are things now that I look back on and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't struggle with this anymore, because I finally stopped dodging my lessons, and it's just like, okay, Linda, let's face this.
Mhm.
Um, so let's see, going back to the other challenges. So external obstacles. Yes, there are external obstacles, but I'm gonna speak from my experience. Some of these external obstacles are put in place by us through our own internal these false beliefs, these false narratives that we keep telling ourselves, because then we listen to that message and we end up putting ourselves in situations that are not good for us, that has this external obstacle. So I'll use this as an example. And I'm sure this is true for someone. Well, no, let me use it for myself. Let me go back. Okay. Let me use my own personal examples. So after I divorced, um, and I got comfortable and I was ready to get out there and date, and it was just like, some of the men that was just, presenting themselves to me, once I got to know them, I'm like, what is up with this? And so just one day, just a random day, I just said, why do I keep attracting the same type of man? And Source spoke to me and said, because you keep telling me what you don't want, but you ain't never told me what you do. I was like, oh my goodness. And so therefore, as long as I just kept, replaying, I don't want this, and this, and this. The reason this, and this kept showing up is because that's where my focus was and my energy was on. I knew what to look out for. So it's like as soon as it showed up, I was like, okay, why are you showing up? No, because that's what that's what I brought my awareness to. So I took the time, and it was hard to come up with what I deemed as a mature, emotionally mature, man. And I did not realize how much of a struggle that was. But it was. But gradually over time, I was able to, identify those characteristics. And it was 99% of the characteristics um, were internal. It wasn't a physical thing, you know. And as I was able to identify that, some of the men that I was ignoring then all of a sudden became very handsome.
You know what?
What? What? No, simply because,
He will not become handsome.
well, there was a
Attractive.
that's the word.
No, I love
Attractive.
that. I love what she
Attractive.
said. I feel like he became handsome, just like
They
she
became
said.
attractive to me. And I was like, what's going on? It was because I was so focused on what I didn't want. That man did not possess what I didn't want, but I couldn't see what he did have because I was just like, this is what I don't want. This is what I don't want. And then
Yeah.
when I was able to say, oh, okay, this is what that looks like. That's what that quality looks like. So then I
Yeah.
was able to open myself up to like, okay, yes, I will go out on a date with you. With you. So, but that was a challenge of what I feared. I feared putting myself back into a situation that was not good for me. I feared not trusting myself. But once I taught myself um, what certain qualities look like and how that would align with who I am, then those things started to, to show up. But even now, that's not even my focus. My focus is more on, connecting with me. Um, I shared with you all, but it was offline last week. Due to my connectivity issues, I wasn't able to join the live. But I'll share that with our audience today. So before I came to Costa Rica, um, I always ask myself with any situation, it's like, okay, what am I going to get out of this? And I'm sitting on my couch in Oklahoma, and I get the message that you're going over there as a healed woman. And I was like, ooh, at first a moment was excited, and then immediately followed by, ooh, um, should I do this? And can I do this? How can I do this? And it was just like, how do you have the audacity to believe that you are healed? And then I was like, oh, time out. We're not going to do that. We are not going to go against what you have worked so hard to achieve. Yes, I believe that I am healed of what I am currently aware of. There may be other things that will come up and develop later, but right now it's like, own that. So it's like, okay. And I'm like, oh, but I don't know what that looks like. I know what it looks like to wake up every morning listening to and saying certain affirmations, reading certain books, doing all these things to help me on my journey of healing. I didn't know how to sit in a space of being healed. So, but I chose to be open to whatever that would present itself as. And so came on over here to enjoy myself and have a good time. And as I told you, the first 2 weeks, I was in the mountains, or was going to be in the mountains, just to be with myself. And about day six, about day six, I got the message of, it's time for you to stop sequestering yourself. You got what you came here for, which, and that message was stop sequestering yourself. And I knew that I had been doing a lot of things in life by myself. And yeah, there's a certain part of me that I know that that's just who I am, as far as, the introvert type of thing. But in certain situations, I would even question, why are you doing this by yourself? And but that's what I needed for me to protect myself in my healing journey. And I no longer need that. And so I questioned myself and challenged myself as to, okay, I got this message. What do I do with it? I still have my reservation for the remaining, um, the rest of the 2 weeks. But do I listen to my intuition? Do I listen to my higher self, that inner guide, and stop sequestering myself? And I chose to do that. And guess what? The next 2 days, this is something, a little history that I learned about Costa Rica, that is close to the equator. So when the sun sets, it sets quickly. And so it gets dark around 5:30, 6 o'clock about every night. So the first 5 or 6 days, the sun was setting. It was like 2 o'clock. So I couldn't do nothing but be in my cabin. It was raining, and just chill. And when I had that conversation with myself, okay, I'm going to stop sequestering myself, made reservations at another Airbnb, at the beach. Those 2 days were so beautiful.
Yeah.
The sun was out longer, the rain was coming later. And it was like, you know what, Linda? It's like, I felt that was what helped me just like keep my butt inside and not distract myself and do what I came here to do. So to bring that all back around to, the challenges of expansion, had I allowed the fear of expansion, I wouldn't have done any of those things. I wouldn't have put myself up in the mountaintop for the period of time that I did. Um, so let me see, what else was I going to say on this. So as far as, overcoming those fears of expansion and the challenges, because that was my little story. Maybe I went a little bit off topic a little bit, but let me bring it back around, bring it back home. Don't be so afraid of what's different, because the other challenges that come about is it ruins our relationships, whether that's relationships with our family, our siblings, our friends, our coworkers, our significant other. I mean, there are people who are so stuck in um, their ways because they fear of, like Akili said, of loss, and it's like, but you just don't realize what could be on the other, not could be, what is on the other side of that. And
Yeah.
yet you choose to stay where you are, ruining other people. And if you bring children into that equation, now you're ruining that child, and their mindset. And so and those are the setbacks as well. So I just want to open up the floor to my other goddesses. What do you guys think about challenges, and what other challenges have you faced?
Child. Okay. Uno, dos, tres. I'm sorry. I just have to tell y'all real quick. This just popped into my head. I'm sorry, podcast viewers, but when we say child, My hairdresser said when he saw somebody write that in the chat somewhere, he's like, I thought y'all was saying Chile. Why would we be saying that? Okay, I'm sorry. I just needed. He's like, I didn't know what y'all was talking about. I was just like, Chile. Why do they keep saying that?
Well, it's about to get hot in here. That's what.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off over there on that side of the
We needed that laugh. That
okay,
is
I'm
too
sorry.
funny.
Too heavy.
I'm sorry, it just came into my mind. But as Goddess Linda was saying these things, I feel like one of the first things that come up for me when I think about expansion or overcoming fear is what your true beliefs are and
Yes.
what you really want. Right?
Mm-hmm.
God. Listen. I'm sorry. You can tell I feel very passionate about this.
I love when you say that.
These beliefs are something else, right?
Yeah.
They call you to the carpet because when you have the opportunity to truly create and you realize, just like Goddess Juanita said, most of us don't trust where you want to go. Most of us don't even damn know where we want to go. Put the trust out the window. If you had the ability to create a list just like a magician, right? Like, okay, this is exactly what I would like to see. If I could get my magic wand out, this is what I would create. Most people have no clue what that is. We
Mm-hmm.
can't even fathom that because you've been limited so much. You've been told so much by other people what's realistic. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to tell you that if you feel like you're up to something bigger than that, embrace the fact that people who are unrealistic are those people who are going to change a lot of what's going on in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I have a personal belief that
Yeah.
in order to be extraordinary, the antithesis of that is comfort and ease, right?
Mm.
But that is again what so many of us are bred to be in, and that's really, you know, part of a larger goal here. If I can just keep you comfortable and easy and you just eat your food and watch TV and never think about doing anything too
Yep.
bigger than that,
Yep.
then there are a lot of factors that are controlling you. And I think that one of our biggest reasons for being on the planet is to elevate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yes.
simply is, but you have to be able to see what is happening that is preventing you from doing it, and you should have an idea of what it is that you want. If you don't know what you want, and if you are unclear about what you believe, I would advise you to sit down with yourself and journal it out, think about it, talk to the other gods and goddesses that you know that have been observing you for years. Find ways to figure out what your belief system looks like and test
Yeah.
that thing and really sit down and ask yourself what you want.
Yep.
Okay?
I
That
love
is, I think that is really huge. And then I'm just going to say this one last thing and keep it super short. If your goal is to do something amazing, you need to realize that you have to bring amazing to the damn thing.
Mm.
The thing itself is not amazing. Okay, let's just consider this for a moment. How many of us like cooking?
Yeah.
Okay, so and
Not
I'm
every
just
day, but
right. Okay, right. So somebody could say that they want to be a chef. They're very passionate about food, right? And they're going to bring that passion to that thing. It is not the cooking itself. Now, I want people to eat. However, you might be able to get the food yourself. I
Yeah.
might not need to cook it. Do I enjoy making sure that my family has food? Yeah, but I feel like, they can, they can probably do it on their. I'm not passionate about cooking
Yeah, you're passionate about it.
There.
at all. Okay, I'm
There.
not going to tiptoe in that area. I am a good cook, but I'm not passionate about it. I would have to bring the amazingness to that thing. The
Yeah,
food is not going to give me the passion.
yeah,
And
Yes.
that's another piece of the puzzle where I feel like we get stuck. We're like, okay, this thing is gonna hit me. No, I don't know that the thing is gonna hit you. You have these gifts and talents in you that you need to investigate. Let them come on out. Try different things for sure, but it's you bringing that amazingness and that passion and that extraordinary component and that ability to be remarkable to the thing. It
mm,
is the
Yes.
yeah,
other way around.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much, Goddess Akili. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you sharing that with us. So, yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Does anyone else have any comments on challenges?
I would just like to say, I think Goddesses have touched on it already, but I would just say, whenever you're ready to make the first step towards that thing that you want, expanding and whatever, trust me, there will be resistance. And sometimes the resistance actually comes from within. It's your own ego,
Mm-hmm.
because your ego likes the comfort. It has established this thing, like it says, it has its own little kingdom. It knows how every little thing is gonna work, and it's content with that, right? So if you start trying to expand and go out, your ego is gonna say, like, why are you doing this? I mean, we got everything we need right here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Mhm.
just gonna say that. And you gonna start, it's gonna say, listen, you got this, you got that, you comfortable. Why you gonna rope the, and you might just lose this. I mean, we good. Leave us alone, right? So just know you are gonna get that resistance. But the whole point is that in spite of that, you have to just learn how to keep going and keep going and keep going. And you're gonna keep getting resistance. Trust me, the resistance part on your expansion, like I was talking about the blowing the balloon, that is not as it gets big, it's always gonna be another level, another challenge, another level, another challenge. But you have to understand that is how you're gonna grow with the challenges. The challenge is going to show you another thing about yourself or another something else you're going to have to learn. So these things that we're fearing are really the lessons that we need to get us to the level, right, that we want to be at. So just if you just think about it like that, it's the lessons that you need to get you to the ultimate place.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for sharing that. And as all the goddesses are saying, is embrace the challenge because that's where your expansion is going to come from. So, as we wrap this up, just want to recap our expansion. It's like don't fear expansion. We are all called, as Goddess Juanita just said, we're all called to expand. We were brought here to level up constantly. So don't fear that expansion. Um, and don't compare your expansion to someone else's
That's
expansion.
good.
You know, someone might be doing something on a more grander scheme. That's their calling to do.
Mhm.
But your expansion is not any less important.
Mhm.
So again, the eagle's going to resist, but go on and put up that good fight. Tell him, nah, you're not going to win, you know? Um, and so, and uh, excuse me, Goddess April brought in the spirituality aspect of it, you know, and do bring into your practice those things that's going to continue to help you. Me personally, meditation plays a big role in my spirituality, in me hearing what I'm called to hear. It for you, it could be that, it could be a combination of other things, and also understand that the different tools that you're going to use throughout your expansion, they also have levels.
Mhm.
So what you might be called to utilize at one point all of a sudden you realize that that's not no longer serving you. And don't think that it wasn't useful or beneficial. It was what you needed in that moment and what you were capable of handling, managing, and enduring to help you get to and get beyond that place of fear and up into the next level of expansion. And Goddess Akili, she spoke on the pain that's um, in the caste system and all of that good stuff. So again, these are just challenges that might get it, that will get in the way. But
Mhm.
understand that if you be persistent and persevere, you will get beyond um, those that place of fear. And it's always going to be there, but it may not be as loud as you
Mm.
continue, because then you can also look back on it and be like, hey, I remember what I achieved this. And at that particular time in my life, that may have been the biggest fear that you felt that you could ever come up against, and
Mhm.
you overcame it.
Yeah.
Pull back on that and use whatever strategy that was required at that time to get beyond and into that next level. So, as we wrap this up, I just want to thank each and every one of our goddesses today for your input, your insight, for all those out there who are watching us, and thank you for your comments. And we will be back again this time next week with another fabulous topic. So, please join us, and thank you again. Stay
Thank
blessed.
you.
Thank you. Ashe.
Ashe.